Strickland versus du Plessis. Time to predict.
Yeah.
I can't believe the first pay-per-view card of 2024 is already upon us. And I'll be honest, the card itself, top to bottom, not the most stacked for a pay-per-view, but I am really looking forward to this main event. We're going to have to make a prediction here, and it's going to be tough because these guys are so even in a lot of ways. They're so opposite in a lot of ways. Obviously, the Vegas odds makers have it pretty much a pick-em fight, and I could see it going either way. So I want to talk about how each man can win the fight and then ultimately devise a prediction. So what's your initial thoughts?
Well, DDP carries a bunch of power, and while a lot of people criticize him for not looking like a polished striker, not really being the cleanest technician when it comes to throwing strikes in MMA, he gets the job done. He's got dynamite in his hands. He's always knocking people out. He really does seem to find his target, even if his punches and his kicks and what he does to set those things up don't look traditional, orthodox, or something that you would study or teach to a student or a team of students. Man, DDP does a lot of things really well. And if Sean Strickland isn't careful, especially early on in the fight, he could find himself in the same position that he found himself against Alex Pereira, which is in the cage with a very powerful guy for 185 pounds. And, you know, Sean loves to be very reactive with his defense. He's not the type to just shell up. He'd rather, do what's called the Philly shell, which is almost unheard of in MMA, but he seems to make it work for him. And then keep his eyes open, have great eyes. Sean Strickland might have some of the best eyes in all of MMA. He keeps his eyes open and he keeps his hands available to parry, and that's his main form and his favorite form of defense. And that's why I think a lot of people get nervous when they're rooting for Sean Strickland to win a fight, because he'll go in there with some of the baddest dudes on the planet, some of the best strikers in the world, and keep his hands down and get right in their face. And you're like, God, I put money on this guy. Yeah. Put your hands up or do something. But that would actually hinder him. And he's really formed his style and created this defensive style that's very difficult for people to beat. If Israel Adesanya can't find any openings in 25 minutes, then you're doing something right. So Sean Strickland, in my opinion, obviously proved to himself and to the world that he's the best 185er on the planet. But Dricus du Plessis, although he does a lot of these things wrong, like I was saying, he seems to land on the target. He seems to have a ton of power when he does it. And sometimes being that unorthodox, weird, cattywampus style fighter can pay off for you, because it's really hard for the champion or your opponent to find somebody that he can bring into the training room, somebody that he can pay to fly across the country or fly across the world and come give you the rounds and give you the looks that you need to see. If you're fighting a guy that's like DDP, you're not really going to be able to go into any random gym on the side of the road and find somebody that emulates that style. You have to search very, very far and wide, and you might not find anybody. Whereas a lot of people that have these buttoned up styles, and maybe they came from a strict boxing gym, or they came from a strict Muay Thai gym, you can kind of pick up on their tendencies because they fight like a lot of people out of their gym. DDP, there's not really been anybody.
He's one of one.
Yeah, he's a one-of-one guy. And while, like I said, some of it might look pretty ugly, he's certainly got a method to his madness.
Yeah, I mean, certainly great case for DDP. He's got the power. If you were to just kind of weigh the pros and the cons, or who checks this box compared to who checks that box, technically speaking, Sean Strickland checks the box for me over DDP. Sean Strickland, as you said, has excellent eyes. His reads are phenomenal. He can be in range, in the danger zone, and still making his opponent miss and making him pay. Power obviously goes to DDP. Sean does not possess that just one-punch starching power that Dricus du Plessis does. Grappling, I think, as far as the jiu-jitsu submission game is concerned, DDP has the advantage. But there again, Sean Strickland's really hard to take down. And his wrestling defense and his ability to thwart off submissions, I believe in a lot of ways is underrated, and that's because he loves to win fights with his hands. But here's the X factor, and this is why I'm picking Sean Strickland to win the fight. Eric Nicksick is the coach of the year. 100%. I'm not willing to hear an argument otherwise. He figured out how to game plan for a guy that's never boxed before to beat the lineal heavyweight champion. And yes, I'm aware of the result of that fight, and I'm not buying it. Francis Ngannou got in there and beat Tyson Fury. Eric Nicksick has shown us now with the game plan to defeat Adesanya, what he did against Tyson Fury, that he absolutely does his homework. He studies his fighters' opponents, and he prepares them beautifully for the fight. So for that reason, when a lot of other things are even and all things considered, I'm going to say that Eric Nicksick and Sean Strickland have been nose to the grindstone for 12 weeks preparing for Dricus du Plessis. I don't know who they brought in to emulate his style, but they probably found a few people, and it might not look exactly the same, but I think he's going to be prepared. I think Sean Strickland's going to take Dricus du Plessis into deep waters. He's going to have to be careful in the first few rounds, and then he's going to really start to take over, and he's going to win a unanimous decision victory.
I love what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. Eric Nicksick and the rest of the guys out of Extreme Couture, when they walked in there with Francis Ngannou to fight Tyson Fury, it looked like the Bad News Bears. Like, What are these guys doing here? But, it's a crossover fight. It was once in a lifetime type of thing. And to go out there and beat the best boxer on the planet in Tyson Fury, obviously he didn't get his hand raised, but everybody knows who won that fight. It was really, really impressive. And, man, talk about going in there against the best strikers, not only just in your sport of MMA and beating Israel Adesanya, but going in there and beating Tyson Fury. I mean, that's nothing to just brush over. Eric Nicksick deserves all the credit in the world and then some, and I think you're right. If there's anybody that can devise a plan to beat somebody so unorthodox and so unconventional like DDP, it's going to be the guys at Extreme Couture. It's going to be Eric Nicksick leading the way, and he's clearly got the greatest fighter at 185 on the planet right now. So if you've got him and you've got your brilliant mind and you know how to figure out these fighters, I think they've got a really good chance at beating DDP. However, I do have to give my prediction, and unfortunately, I love Sean Strickland as a champion. I think, he's really embodied this role. He's done a lot of things, and a lot of people thought he'd probably fall short as a world champion, a UFC's brand ambassador. But to me, I think his authenticity, the fact that he's raw, the fact that he's real, is what people really, really cling on to. They love him for it. And look, he might say things that ruffle some people's feathers. He might say some things that, piss people off. But at the end of the day, he's speaking a lot of truth, and he's helping a lot of people because he's so relatable in so many ways. And that's why I do want to see him keep this belt. However, I have a feeling we're going to see a UFC belt finally touch down in South Africa. And oddly enough, DDP, with his unorthodox style and everything, is likely going to be the guy to take it there. I think DDP gets this fight done. I think he gets it done early, and I think it sets up a mega fight for DDP versus Israel Adesanya later. Not to say that he's looking over Sean Strickland or anything like that. I just think he's got this explosivity, and he's got this dynamic striking that's very weird and hard to prepare for. And Sean Strickland, like I said, he loves to get right in the face of his opponents, and they tend to be the heaviest strikers that his division has. And sometimes you zig when you're supposed to zag. And even though Sean Strickland has some of the best striking defense in the entire UFC, I still think DDP is going to find his target somehow, some way. He's got to do it early. If he doesn't do it early, Sean's going to dog walk and put on a 25-minute clinic on him and then get his hand raised just the way he did against Israel Adesanya. But I think you're going to see an explosive DDP come out really early, and it might be a storm too big for the champ to handle.
Yeah, well, if you could just pinpoint one Achilles heel for Sean Strickland, is that he does have problems with a heavy power puncher sometimes. Right. Look what happened with Alex Pereira. Exactly. And then he turned around and defeated the sort of the finesse master, Israel Adesanya. So when he's operating in that groove where he knows kind of the framework that the other fighter is going to operate in, he can do exceedingly well.
Right.
But if it's a dogfight and, somebody's just going to swing heavy, and land that big hook or land that big straight down the middle, that tends to be where his susceptibility is. So while I'm not going to change my prediction, I still think Sean gets it done. I think him and Nicksick will have a bulletproof plan. I do see that if I'm wrong and DDP wins, it's going to be the way you predicted. It's going to be early KO. I don't think many people are looking at this to be a 5-round decision win if DDP gets his hand raised. I think the consensus is it's all probably early KO, or it's a knockdown that leads to a submission or something of that nature.
Right. I think Sean's going to want to go in there and be patient early on, which is going to eventually start to gas DDP out a little bit. But if DDP goes out there and catches him one time, he's really good at turning the jets on full blast and finishing a fight with a TKO. Once he's got his guy hurt, he smells a little blood in the water. That's the best way DDP can win. And I really think that's the only way he can win. Hurt him early and either finish him with a submission or just finish him with TKO strikes. If he doesn't get it done that way and he doesn't get it done early, I see Sean Strickland's chances of winning go way up.